Shadows of the Forgotten. The silver moons of Nerinth cast long shadows across the labor fields, where hundreds of figures stooped beneath the watchful gaze of hovering sentinels. Among them, Ilara Kane straightened her aching back for just a moment, wiping sweat from her brow with a dirt-smudged hand. Her golden brown eyes, distinctly human in their expressiveness, scanned the horizon where the sprawling metropolis of the Vexari Imperium dominated the skyline. Ilara wasn't supposed to exist. None of them were. The scattered descendants of Earth's lost colonies, human bloodlines that should have been purged generations ago when the Vexari swept through this sector of space. Yet somehow they endured, as laborers, as servants, as living reminders of a civilization the Imperium had declared extinct. Back to work, human, hissed a voice behind her. The Overseer, a tall Vexari with scaled skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, raised his neuronic prod. Ilara bowed her head and returned to harvesting the glowing fungi that powered Vexari biotechnology. She'd seen what those prods could do. Neural scrambling that left victims drooling and vacant-eyed for days. "Sorry, Overseer," she murmured, the dialect of the conquerors feeling foreign on her tongue even after 26 years of speaking it. The Overseer lingered a moment longer than necessary. "Your kind always thinks someone will save you," he said, voice thick with contempt. "Even after centuries, I still catch you looking to the stars." Ilara said nothing. It was true. The stories persisted among the human descendants, whispered tales of Earth, the homeworld. Not dead, the elders insisted, but waiting. Building strength, coming back for its children someday. Pure fantasy, of course. Comfort for the oppressed. That night, as the triple moons reached their apex, Ilara slipped from the crumbling dormitory where human laborers were housed. It was forbidden to be outside after curfew, but she'd mastered the blind spots in the surveillance grid years ago. She moved silently through the ruins of what had once been a human settlement, before the Vexari reduced it to rubble. Her destination stood partially hidden by overgrowth, a structure that predated the invasion. Most assumed it was just another collapsed building, but Ilara knew better. Her grandmother had shown her the hidden entrance when she was just a child, extracting a promise that Ilara would guard its secret. Inside, past a concealed panel and down a narrow passage, lay a small chamber untouched by Vexari detection. The air was stale but breathable. Ilara activated her small light and approached the chamber's centerpiece, a console of strange design, covered in dust, but still occasionally blinking with tiny lights. An Earth beacon, her grandmother had explained. From the early colony days, it still sends out a pulse, far too weak to reach anywhere. But it's ours. Ilara placed her palm on the console, as she had countless times before, a ritual of connection to a heritage she'd never known. But tonight, something different happened. The console hummed beneath her touch, and a section of its surface reconfigured, revealing a compartment she'd never noticed. Inside lay a small crystalline device. When Ilara lifted it, it responded to her body heat, projecting a holographic interface of glowing blue symbols. "Automated colony response protocol initiated," announced a synthetic voice, making Ilara jump. "Earth reclamation signal detected. Transponder active." Ilara's heart thundered in her chest. Earth reclamation signal. After centuries of silence, she barely slept that night, her mind racing. The next day in the fields, she watched the Vexari overseers with new eyes. Had they detected the signal too? Did they know something was coming? 3 days later, she had her answer. The Vexari High Command arrived on Nerinth in an unprecedented visit. Laborers were locked down as sleek ships descended on the capital. Ilara only caught glimpses on the public broadcasts, towering Vexari officials with elaborate crest markings denoting their high status, speaking in urgent tones. "The human signal is nothing," declared Supreme Commander Vex Mordai on the broadcast. "A ghost echo from dead systems. The species has been contained for 3 centuries. Their homeworld is a quarantined ruin, their colonies assimilated or destroyed. Yet despite these reassurances, defense platforms around Nerenth were activated. Patrol vessels increased their sweeps of the system's outer boundaries. Something had the Imperium worried. Ilara began collecting whispers, fragments of information from other human laborers who worked in Vexari homes or maintenance facilities. Strange anomalies had been detected at the system's edge. Communications disruptions, sensor ghosts that appeared and vanished. "The Earth ghost is coming," an old man whispered to her one night, his eyes bright with unshed tears. My grandfather's grandfather spoke of this day. Ilara wanted to believe, but hope was dangerous. Hope made people reckless, made them take risks. And when Thomas, a young human descendant who worked in the communications hub, was publicly executed for seditious interference with Imperial systems, she felt that fragile hope waver. They found his body displayed in the labor compound's central yard. A warning. The overseer made everyone look. "This is what happens to those who believe in human salvation," he announced. "There is no Earth fleet. There are no saviors coming." But that night, as Ilara returned to the hidden beacon chamber, she found evidence suggesting Thomas had died for a reason. He'd managed to transmit a message, coordinates of Nerenth, details of the human labor population, Vexari defense capabilities, all sent through a channel the ancient beacon had opened. And there was something else. A response, translated into text on the console screen. "Message received. Hold position. Thunder approaches. Remember, Earth never forgets its children." The words burned into her mind. That night, Ilara did something dangerous. She began to tell others. Selective, careful choices at first. Elderly laborers who had nothing left to lose. Children who could keep secrets. Slowly, deliberately, she spread the message. Prepare, but do not react. Wait, but be ready. The Vexari noticed the change in the labor compound. A new tension, furtive glances, whispers that stopped when overseers approached. They increased punishments, reduced rations, extended work hours, trying to crush whatever spark had ignited. It was too late. The hope had taken root, spreading from person to person like a contagion the Vexari couldn't contain. When 3 guards were found unconscious, their weapons missing, the Imperium imposed a full lockdown. Laborers were confined to barracks except for work shifts. Random executions were carried out as examples. Ilara knew they were running out of time. Whatever was coming needed to arrive soon, or there would be no humans left on Nerenth to save. On the 16th night after the signal, she was summoned urgently to the hidden chamber by Mira, an elderly woman who had taken to monitoring the beacon. "It's changing," Mira whispered, pointing at the console where symbols flashed rapidly. "Something's happening." The beacon was receiving a continuous stream now, complex data packets flooding the ancient system. Coordinates, timestamps, tactical information, and embedded within it all, a simple countdown. 03:42:16. Less than 4 hours. Ilara moved with purpose now. The small resistance she'd organized needed to be ready. They had smuggled weapons, prepared improvised explosives, identified key Vexari vulnerabilities. It wasn't much. A few hundred desperate humans with minimal fighting experience against an entrenched Imperial force. But they wouldn't need to win. They just needed to create chaos, to divide attention. As the countdown approached 0, the night sky of Nerenth remained serene and unchanged. The Vexari metropolis glittered with artificial light, defense platforms visible as faint silhouettes against the stars. Nothing seemed different. Had it all been for nothing? A cruel joke, or worse, a Vexari trap to identify dissidents. Then Ilara felt it, a subtle vibration through the ground, more sensed than heard. The air pressure changed, making her ears pop painfully. Above, the stars began to shift. Not the stars themselves, she realized with a gasp. Something was distorting the light around them. Massive objects, descending through the upper atmosphere with technology far beyond anything the Vexari possessed. Alarms began to wail across the city. Defense platforms swiveled wildly, searching for targets they couldn't properly detect. Confused chatter erupted on public communication channels as Vexari civilians pointed upward. The distortions resolved themselves into shapes, massive ships, angular and purposeful, their hulls absorbing rather than reflecting light. They made no sound as they descended, nothing to herald their arrival except the displacement of air and the sudden shadow they cast over the Vexari capital. On their sides, illuminated in fierce red against the black hulls, was a symbol every human descendant would recognize from ancestral memory: a stylized earth, encircled by a protective hand. The ships hung there for one breathless moment, as if giving the Imperium time to comprehend what was happening. Then the night sky erupted with light as smaller craft launched from the capital ships, hundreds of them, descending like rain. The first shots were fired by panicking Vexari defense platforms. Their energy weapons lanced upward, most dissipating harmlessly against advanced shields. The response was surgical and overwhelming. Key defense installations disappeared in precisely targeted strikes, their destruction barely audible over the continuing descent of human forces. Ilara stood on a hillside overlooking the labor compound. The small resistance force gathered around her. Below, confused guards ran in all directions as their communication systems failed. In the distance, the Vexari capital was sectioned by columns of light as human ships established landing zones. "They came," whispered someone beside her, voice thick with disbelief. "Earth remembered us." Ilara watched as the first human soldiers touched down near the labor compound. Figures in sleek armor moving with disciplined precision, weapons that made Vexari technology look primitive by comparison. They didn't cheer, didn't posture. They simply moved forward with the inexorable confidence of a force that had crossed galaxies with a single purpose. The Earth descendants of Nerenth had survived centuries of oppression, sustained by nothing but stories and hope. Now they stood witness as those stories took physical form, as humanity returned not with diplomatic overtures or cautious probes, but with the full might of a civilization the Vexari had foolishly believed extinct. The overseer who had tormented Ilara for years stumbled from the compound's command center, staring up at the human ships with incomprehension dawning in his multifaceted eyes. "Impossible," he gasped when he saw Ilara watching him. Earth was contained, neutralized. Ilara stepped forward, the small resistance force moving with her. In her hand, she held one of the stolen Vexari weapons. "You should have killed us all when you had the chance," she said softly. "Earth never forgets its children." And now the thunder has arrived. Above them, more ships broke through the atmosphere, their hulls briefly glowing red with the heat of entry before returning to their light-absorbing black. They came not in ones or twos, but in dozens, then hundreds, an armada emerging from the darkness between stars. Humanity had returned to Nerenth, and they had not come alone. The thunder of arrival. The Vexari Imperium had ruled unchallenged for centuries. Their technological superiority, their disciplined military hierarchy, their absolute control of interstellar communications, all had made them seemingly invincible. But they had never faced humanity at its full strength, with the accumulated rage of 300 years fueling its return. Commander Alexander Riven stood on the command deck of the EFS's Retribution, watching tactical displays as his forces secured landing zones across Nerenth's surface. His weathered face, lined with the scars of previous campaigns, remained impassive as reports flooded in. Defense grid neutralized. Atmospheric control seized. Civilian centers isolated from military response, reported his executive officer. Riven nodded. Casualties. Minimal on our side. Vexari military losses approximately 8,000. Civilian casualties negligible. Precision targeting protocols observed. This wasn't vengeance. Earth didn't massacre civilians, even those of an enemy. This was liberation, conducted with the cold efficiency that had become humanity's hallmark since the Great Rebuilding. "The human descendants?" Revan asked, his voice softening slightly. "Located in labor compounds across the planet. Extraction teams deployed. First contact established with resistance elements. On the view screen, a tactical officer highlighted one particular labor compound. "Sir, there's someone you should meet. She's been coordinating the underground resistance here. Her people call her the Keeper." When Ilara was brought aboard the Retribution, she couldn't stop staring. Everything, from the silent efficiency of the corridors to the technology that seemed to anticipate needs before they were expressed, spoke of a civilization far beyond what she had imagined in her dreams of Earth. The humans she encountered were tall, healthy, confident, nothing like the beaten, malnourished descendants on Nerith. They moved with purpose, their eyes clear and direct. Many nodded respectfully as she passed, unexpected deference to someone they'd just met. Commander Riven waited in a circular chamber, windows displaying the ongoing operation below. He turned when she entered, and Ilara was struck by the intensity in his gaze, not unkind, but weighted with responsibility and determination. "Ilara Kane," he said, extending a hand in greeting. The gesture was unfamiliar to her. Such contact was forbidden under Vexori rule. "Earth owes you a debt we can never repay." She hesitantly took his hand. "You came," she said simply, her voice breaking. The stories were true. Riven's expression darkened. "We should have come centuries ago. The truth is a bitter one, Ilara. Earth didn't stay away because we couldn't reach you. We stayed away because we weren't ready to win." Over the next hours, as the liberation of Nerith continued below, Riven explained what had happened after the Vexari Imperium's first devastating attacks on human colonies 3 centuries earlier. Earth hadn't been destroyed as the Vexari claimed. It had been isolated, cut off from its colonies by superior Vexari technology that disabled the wormhole network humans had relied upon. The first wave of retaliation had been disastrous. Human ships decimated, entire fleets lost. "We learned the hardest lesson in our history," Riven said grimly. "That we weren't ready. That charging in would mean extinction. So humanity had done something painful and necessary. They had withdrawn. They had rebuilt. They had advanced their technology not incrementally but exponentially, focusing every resource on a single purpose: the ability to challenge the Vexari Imperium not just in one battle, but in a war that would free every human under alien subjugation. For generations, we prepared," Riven continued. "We sent only the most carefully disguised scout ships. We gathered intelligence. We built an armada unlike anything the galaxy has seen. And most difficult of all, we waited. While we suffered," Ilara said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Riven met her gaze unflinchingly. "Yes, that is humanity's greatest shame, and one we will spend generations atoning for. But had we come earlier, we would have failed, and the Vexari would have exterminated every human in the galaxy out of spite." Below them, liberation forces were now entering the Vexari capital city. Unlike the chaotic conquests of ancient human history, this was a methodical operation. Strategic targets were neutralized with precision strikes. Vexari military installations were surrounded and given one chance to surrender. Those that resisted disappeared in focused bursts of energy that left surrounding structures untouched. "Your weapons," Ilara observed. "They're nothing like what the Vexari use." "Gravitic compression technology," Riven explained. "It doesn't destroy matter so much as collapse it into itself. Minimal collateral damage. Minimal radiation." A burst of communication interrupted them. A holographic display showed a Vexari High Commander, his elaborate crest markings identifying him as Supreme Commander Vex Mordai himself. "This unprovoked aggression will not stand," the Vexari leader hissed, mandibles clicking in agitation. "The full might of the Imperium will descend upon." Riven cut the transmission with a casual gesture. "They always say the same thing," he remarked. "In every system we've liberated so far." Ilara stared at him. "How many?" "Nerith is the 23rd world we've reclaimed in the past 3 months," Riven said. "Each one with human descendants who, like you, never stopped believing we would come." The scope of the operation stunned her. This wasn't just a rescue mission for Nerenth. This was a systematic dismantling of the Vexari Imperium's hold on human-inhabited space. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Tactical displays showed a new development. A Vexari battle fleet had emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Dozens of warships, including 3 dreadnoughts that dwarfed even the impressive human vessels. The Imperium's Third Fleet, a tactical officer announced. They've bypassed our early warning network. Riven's expression didn't change. Deploy Phase 2, he ordered calmly. Ilara watched in confusion as the human ships made no move to engage or retreat. They maintained position while the Vexari fleet approached, weapon systems visibly charging. Shouldn't we? She began. Watch, Riven said softly. As the Vexari fleet crossed the orbital path of Nerenth's outermost moon, space itself seemed to ripple. Where there had been empty vacuum, massive structures suddenly appeared, orbital platforms that had been hidden by technology beyond Vexari detection capabilities. Before the Imperium ships could alter course, the platforms activated. Not with conventional weapons, but with fields of energy that enveloped the Vexari vessels. Their propulsion systems failed. Weapons went dark. Communication ceased. Interdiction fields, Riven explained to a stunned Ilara. They don't destroy. They simply neutralize every ship, every weapon, every communication system. Within minutes, the mighty Vexari fleet hung powerless in space, trapped in bubbles of altered physics that rendered their technology useless. No shots fired, no lives lost, simply the complete negation of their military capability. This is what we spent 3 centuries developing, Riven said quietly. Not bigger guns or faster ships, but the ability to end a war without genocide. On the surface below, the liberation continued with the same methodical efficiency. Human descendants were being evacuated from labor compounds. Vexari civilians were contained but unharmed. Strategic installations fell one by one. Ilara found herself working alongside the liberation forces, guiding them through the landscape she knew intimately. Her small resistance force, now equipped with human technology, helped locate hidden Vexari bunkers and security installations. They moved through the capital city's administrative center, securing data archives and command nodes. In the central Dominion Hall, where Vexari officials had for centuries proclaimed the inferiority of other species, Ilara stood beside human soldiers as they downloaded the entire Imperial knowledge base. These records, she said, looking at the transfer progress, they'll show everything. The breeding programs, the purges, the labor camps. Every last detail, confirmed the human tech specialist. The Vexari are meticulous record keepers. Their own archives will be their indictment. As they worked, a group of Vexari civilians watched from behind a containment field, their expressions ranging from fear to hatred to confusion. One young Vexari, barely into adulthood judging by his partial crest, stared at Ilara with particular intensity. "You were property yesterday," he said in their language. "How is this possible?" Ilara approached the field, studying him. "We were never property. We were waiting. For 3 centuries, no species is so patient. Humans are." She held his gaze. "Remember that when you rebuild your society. Remember what happens when you mistake patience for weakness." By the 3rd day, Nerenth was secured. The Vexari military had surrendered or been neutralized. The administrative hierarchy had collapsed with remarkable speed once their communications and defense systems failed. Throughout it all, human forces maintained their discipline. No revenge killings, no looting, no atrocities against civilians. Ilara found this restraint almost unsettling. After centuries of abuse, part of her had expected, perhaps even wanted, retribution. But the Earth forces operated by different principles. This wasn't conquest, it was liberation, conducted with clinical precision. Commander Riven invited her to the final briefing aboard the Retribution. Representatives from other liberated worlds were present. Humans of varying appearance who had, like her, lived under Vexeri oppression. Some had been enslaved for generations longer than her people. Nerith is secure, Riven announced. Humanitarian teams are deploying now. Each of you will help coordinate the transition for your people. Transition to what? Asked an older man, his skin bearing the distinctive markings the Vexeri had used to identify labor castes. To freedom, Riven said simply. Some of you may choose repatriation to Earth or its core colonies. Others may wish to remain here, with Vexeri authority replaced by elected councils. The choice belongs to you. The representatives exchanged glances. Such choices had been unimaginable days ago. And the Vexeri themselves? Ilara asked. What happens to them? Riven's expression was measured. The Imperium as a political entity is finished. Their leadership will face justice for war crimes. Their military has been dismantled. But the civilians, they will adapt to a new reality, just as they forced others to adapt to their rule. Tactical displays showed the progress across the galaxy. System after system where human liberation forces were deploying. The Vexeri Imperium, which had dominated this sector for centuries, was collapsing with astonishing speed, not through destruction, but through the systematic neutralization of its ability to project power. They never understood us, Riven continued. They thought our scattered colonies were the extent of humanity. They never found Earth itself. When they encountered resistance, they assumed they had broken our spirit. What they never grasped was that humanity's greatest strength isn't technology or numbers, it's endurance. He brought up a final display, a map of known space, with highlighted regions showing the old human colonial territories, now being systematically reclaimed. 3 centuries we waited. 3 centuries we prepared. 3 centuries they believed us defeated. His voice carried the weight of generations. And now they understand what the galaxy will soon learn. Earth never abandons its own. That night, as the first Earth medical ships landed to treat centuries of neglect and abuse, Ilara stood on a hillside overlooking the changed landscape of her homeworld. The Vexeri capital still stood, but now human ships moved freely through its airspace. The labor compounds were empty, their populations relocated to temporary settlements with proper food, medicine, and dignity. A young Earth officer, Lieutenant Kess, she'd learned, approached with something in his hands. We found this in the historical archives, he said, offering her a small metal object. It belongs to your family. It was a simple identification tag, worn and aged. Engraved on it was a name. Kane Melissa, Earth Colonial Forces. My grandmother, Ilara whispered, tracing the letters. She always said someone would come. She was right, Lieutenant Kess said, just a few centuries late. Above them, more ships continued to arrive. Not warships now, but vessels carrying supplies, medical personnel, education specialists. The infrastructure of rebuilding. The Vexeri had ruled through fear and technological superiority. They had believed their dominion would last millennia. They had dismissed humanity as a broken, scattered species. What they had never understood, what they could never have prepared for, was the storm that had been building beyond their awareness. A storm of human determination, advancing in silence until the moment came to unleash its thunder. As night fell on Nerith, the sky glowed not with the harsh lights of Vexeri control towers, but with the softer illumination of Earth vessels. Below, in temporary shelters and medical facilities, the descendants of humanity's lost colonies looked up at those lights and saw not conquerors, but family who had finally found their way home. The waiting was over. The thunder had arrived. And across the stars, on 1,000 worlds where humans still labored under alien domination, word was spreading. Earth remembers its children, and humanity's return echoes like thunder across the void.